ADP is notoriously oversold, mostly because the data of itself, it's garbage. And while you absolutely need to pay attention to it, one great way to pay attention to it is through the lens of scarcity. Welcome to the Fantasy NBA Today podcast, the sports ethos presentation hosted by yours truly, Aaron Brewski. Typically, Hall of Famer, FSWA Hall of Famer Steve Alexander, and the inventor of fantasy basketball, Rick Campbell, generally will be on the show. Today, I'm running solo, and we're going live on YouTube, I believe, for the first time. So welcome. Thank you guys for joining. And today we're going to be looking at point guards and ADP tiers so we can start to parse out some of the good spots to take some of these guys and also where things start to get hairy if you wait too long. So if you want to get your questions answered during today's show, go ahead and actually join us on YouTube. And your questions will go through the whole filter here, and hopefully we'll be able to pop them up on screen here. Otherwise, I got a ton of stuff to talk to you guys about point guards and fantasy drafts. We're looking at ADP. I like to bag on ADP because the data is garbage. I mean, like sometimes, the first week, 2 weeks of ESPN, you'll see somebody who's in the 30s who should be in the 130s, and you'll see somebody in the 130s who should be in the top 20. And it's just really weird data. And then the data gets really jumbled up because people are drafting based on that data. And then you have auto drafters that are drafting based on that data. So trends, I mean, if we're looking at this from a pure data perspective, ADP is garbage, but it does tell us, generally speaking, where players are going to go. And that helps us understand what we're going to do on draft day. Yes, Andre, I'll get away from the mic. I'm sorry. I'm moving the mic away, sir. You got it. So join us as we work out the kinks here for our live production. And we've been doing all these on video all summer long. So it's not our first rodeo here, but going live and serving both our pod and our YouTube audience at the same time. It's a little bit of a tightrope walk. So forgive me as we kind of bang around here in the beginning here. But before we start about these point guard or start talking about these point guard tiers, again, reply to the tweet if you have questions you want to get answered in a future show. But if you want to get your question answered on air, go to YouTube and then you'll be able to ask your questions. We'll be able to put them on air. All right. Before we jump in, let's quickly shout out our sponsor. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for all things football. BetOnline has every stat, matchup, and even live odds and spreads to bet on during the games. Think you know your stuff? Get in on our $200,000 mega contest and pick 5 games against the spread every week for your chance at weekly prizes, a share of $200,000. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino, get on a game of blackjack or poker, unwind with one of our over 150 slots. Head to the website today, get on the action. BetOnline, the game starts here. All right. Let's talk some ADP tiers, point guards. Point guards they're a dime a dozen. No, not a dime a dozen, but there are a ton of great point guards in the association. When we're talking scarcity and we're talking fantasy drafts, point guards going fast and furious off the draft boards. The story is old as time, as long as I've been covering this wonderful game. This year, I looked at this listing of ADP tiers, and a lot of this comes from our ADP tracking tool that you can get as a part of the draft guide, put together by the great Andre Lemos. Andre, shoot me, please. It's been a year of talking with you every day. I should be able to know how to say your name, but I don't. It's like all these NBA player names that I've struggled with. Once it's in my head the wrong way, it's hard to get it out. But I digress. Looking at these ADP tiers, pardon me, they are impressive. I mean, you're looking at every stage of the draft. You can get a quality player, and the question really just becomes how early and how excited are you about the players in a given tier. And what we're going to do is we're going to figure out at what point in time is the fall off so crazy that you're crazy for waiting that long. So we'll get right into that right now. Let's start off at the top. I have a hard time calling this tier 1, but it kind of is tier 1. And I do think there's enough hype about Tyrese Halliburton that he sort of deserves some sort of treatment in this tier. Is he, in the same tier as the guys beneath him in ADP? Of course, we're talking ADP of guys like Steph and Trey. And the answer is he's a cut above. But is he worth being in a tier with Luka and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander? No, not even close. He probably deserves his own tier, but we don't want to have 5 million tiers here. And so we're going to put him in a tier with Luca and Shea. That said, there's a severe fall off there. Luca and Shea, and especially Shea, they have puncher's power. They could theoretically be the number one fantasy play if a couple things break right for them, especially in the case of Luca. Shea, especially, has a puncher's chance at number one overall value. And that's saying something because there are 5 million players in Oklahoma City. And hopefully, if you draft Shea, he just continues to keep going. He continues to be more dominant. And we're talking about a player who's theoretically could take another step forward. He could theoretically be even better than he was last year. And yes, there's a lot of crowding in Oklahoma City. Note that some of this crowding is actually of defensive minded players like Lou Dort, players like Alex Caruso, players like Isaiah Hartenstein, though I love Hartenstein and I would hate calling him a defensive only guy. But Chet Holmgren also, these are guys that are willing to fit in. They play better when they fit in. And Shea can just run around and chuck. And if you're a guy like Shea that can get an edge, you shoot an amazing free throw, you draw fouls at an amazing rate, you have a number of spots on the floor that are go-to shots that you can count on making them in high leverage situation against the best defenders in the league. I mean, so he is automatic and has a fantasy friendly game. Luca, a lot of people think Luca could be the number 2 pick. A lot of people think Luca, I don't want to say the number 1 pick because Wemby's around, but they kind of lock Luca into either 2 or 3. I have personally, and I'll just give you a little intel from the B150. I got him at 4. By the way, the B150 is currently on sale for Sports Ethos 360 subscribers. So go check out sportsethos.com and get in on that. Man, I did another update last night. First of all, I got more adrenaline than I've had in a couple months. So I love that. 2, I'm on less sleep and I don't love that. I just got over the kid being in the 1, 2, 3-year-old range where there was no sleep. And now that I got sleep back, to not sleep again, it is painful and I don't recommend it. But been sort of up all night the last couple of weeks putting together the B150, and that is up and it's got me energized. But having poured over these numbers for the last few months, I don't have a case for Luca above 4, and that's okay. Luca's Luca. If you get him at 4, if you take him at 3, if you take him at 2, he is in that upper tier of players. So you're feeling pretty good. There is quite a drop off after those guys. So that's not fun if you're not getting that top 4 pick. But this tier, if you get Shai Gilgeous-Alexander at 2, 3, or 4, you're going to be thrilled. He is, aside from injury concerns dating back to about 3-4 seasons ago, he is as automatic as it gets. And as far as Luca goes, really what we're wondering about with Luca, the reason why you would draft him at 2 or 3 above Shai is you're thinking, what if? What if Luca took the whole off season and didn't drink any beer and he just got in great shape? I don't know. The pictures don't show that Luca got in great shape, but he is one of the game's ultimate competitors. And really, you can't just rule it out. And I don't care if he's in great shape or not. Even if he's not in great shape, it's possible that he adds another layer to his game above and beyond what he's already doing, and things just sort of come together the right way. Maybe he figured out how to shoot free throws at a high level. I mean, that would be the thing that starts to propel him above and beyond the Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. We have no proof of that. We don't know that that's going to happen. He's been improving, throughout his career. Without that, he can't compete at that level. I don't know if he will be able to get more counting stats than he's already getting, but theoretically he can get more efficient. Theoretically he can do better. And there is an entire team that's wrapped around him that's willing to let him play Luka ball. So I don't see it this year, but the reason why you would go 2 or 3 above Shai is that what if. All right. So if you were listening to this on Twitter, as we figure out all the buttons over here, if you're listening to this on Twitter, head on over to YouTube, and that way you can get your questions in. that's my big advice for the front end of this show. If you're listening on Twitter, head on over to YouTube, get your questions in, and we want to get more questions from you guys. It's one of the best things about the last couple months is I've been able to do more content than ever. I'm getting more healthier. My battle against TOS, I wrote about it in the front end of the B150, which, by the way, the entire front end of the B150 before you get to the ranks is up for free on sportsethos.com. So check out the tweets, sending out links to the B150, and you can read about my journey with TOS. Actually, Kyle Anderson had the same exact surgery as I did, I believe. I'm not his doctor, so I can't say that for sure. But way back when this happened, about 4 years ago or 3 years ago, this came through the wire, and it didn't really make sense to me. It didn't click that he was going through the same exact thing I was. Haven't been able to write, type, hold a pen. Early on, I couldn't stand. Standing made it worse, and sitting made it worse. What a combo, right? Laying down made it worse. So I kind of had to rotate amongst the things so it didn't get too bad. I wasn't able to do content so much. Now, though, I had a surgery to remove a rib to free up the nerve that comes through the neck, blah, 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 blah. And it's a slow road to recovery. I have to work out every single day, which is great. It's too bad I didn't do that on my own accord. It took a major injury for me to get there, but it's been good. My lifestyle is healthy, and I'm getting healthier by the day. I'm able to do more content, able to do this show, and it's just been awesome. And we want to get more questions involved. We want to get more listeners, subscribers, readers, get you guys involved. That's the number one thing, and make sure that you guys are getting your questions answered. And you can do that both on these shows and then also within our premium products, our NBA Fantasy Pass. You get access to myself, you get access to other pros. You get your questions answered both before the season and in the season. And while I'm shilling and talking about products, our tools are insane this upcoming season. So think about this, like, who does 400 hours worth of research on their projections? I mean, nobody. Like, there's not a lot of people that are that crazy and or nuts, but also, with that sort of professional freedom, that goal, that ability to do that. And so those projections, not only did they get this massive amount of research on the front end, but we do this on an ongoing basis, and we pump that data into all of our tools. So, you could be using a tool that you create yourself. You could be using a tool from another place. And the question just becomes like, where's the data? What's actually inside the tool that's helping you to make your decisions or not? Is this stuff just sort of kind of regurgitated per 36 number stuff? Is there actual intel baked into it? So if you're out there, whether it's fantasy season long, if you're out there and it's, you got a daily league, you're really streaming and trying to get the most value out of each and every play. If you're doing prop betting, over unders, that's the next frontier, guys. If you want to make a ton of money, just go into the player prop betting market and just kill those lines. And our tool is what pros use to go and do that. So these tools are going to be outstanding, and you guys got to check that out. They're all a part of the Fantasy Pass, and just have at it, folks. Okay. Yes, Andre, back to the basketball. I think with this tier, we've talked enough about how Luka and Shea are cut above Tyrese. The one great thing about Tyrese, I'll say this: Tyrese had a top 15 season last year, and it was really under some strained conditions. The last couple months of his season, he was not playing like the Tyrese Halliburton that we all know and love, and he still finished at that top 15 level. They love Tyrese Halliburton, obviously. They've wrapped their entire team around him. He is only going to continue getting better and better. If there is a player that has sort of top 5 potential, what's the likelihood that a player has top 5 potential? He's at the very tops of those lists. So you get yourself a nice, safer upside play. Yes, there's a little bit of injury risk, but Tyrese, if you're looking at the back end of the first round, he's a guy that definitely fits the bill for a lot of teams. Okay, I'm going to go to ADP tier number 2 here. And it's really, it's a fun one. Steph Curry, Trae Young, 2 players that are very similar in terms of kind of their size, their stature, their want and desire to fling up threes from anywhere on the court. Both have been mentioned. Obviously, Steph has been mentioned in this elite zone of fantasy plays and has been an elite player. He's been a player who's boat raced the entire league during one season. I know he carried me to a couple high stakes titles that season where he shot 50% from the field and was just absolutely nuts. Trey, at one point in time, flirting with sort of top three status and had a really efficient season once and then kind of fell back from there. And now, no DeJounte Murray. It's his team. He's got Quinn Snyder in his corner. There's a lot of hype about Trey Young this year. It's not really reflected in his ADP. Both he and Steph are going around 12. But I know that a lot of analysts are kind of picking up the pace on Trey Young support. And Curry, for his part, I think people are a little bit asleep on Curry. I think they're, just sort of bored with Curry. I think that the injury risk is, between that and not finishing super high in recent seasons, I think people are a little bit out on Curry. And I'll say this, I think if you end up in the back end of your draft or somehow one of these guys slips to the beginning of the second round, you got to feel great. It's tough drafting at the end of the first round anyway, especially without third round reversal. You want guys that have those sort of puncher's chances to rise up the ranks. Steph in a sort of not a swan song season, but he ain't getting any younger, folks. And yeah, Golden State isn't really looking all that great, but they do have a lot of goodish players, and they will all be sort of subservient to Steph, even though that's never really a question mark. But he might have to carry this team offensively, and he might have that last sort of big season before Father Time kicks in and he's unable to compete at a top 5 level. So I like Steph for that reason. And Trey with no DeJounte and maybe sort of a prove it season where he's feeling a little bit disrespected. I think that there could be some upside there. So I'm happy with this tier. I'm happy if I'm in these positions, I'm happy to be a part of that tier and feeling like I'm getting decent value. All right, this next tier is James Harden, Jalen Brunson, and Damian Lillard, but we're going to actually go to that after Ice Pick in Your Eye trivia, after the break. Okay. We had a break for the pod. For those of you on YouTube, you get to watch the way that the sausage gets made here. It's Ice Pick in Your Eye trivia time. Questions in. Which NBA player has the most turnovers between October 2nd, 2019 and October 2nd, 2024? Who's kicking the ball around the yard? Obviously not this upcoming season. Thanks for that weird date range, Andre. And between October 2nd, 2019. Also, I guess today's the 2nd. That's why he did that. I get 7 tries, I'm told. I get tips every 2 questions. Thank you very much, because it could get really awkward on air as I don't know the answers to the questions. October 2nd, 2019. So the 1920, 2021, 21, 22, 22, 23 seasons. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We got people giving their answers on air. I like this YouTube thing. The listeners are helping me. Steve Sloan, what's up, man? He gives me a great tip here. I don't think I'm going to say, well, yeah, okay. Steve, I'm going to go with you. Steve Sloan, he somehow got his guess on air. Congratulations for that. He said Russell Westbrook, and that's a man that likes to turn the ball over. He might be the Brett Favre of NBA basketball players. I'll go with Russell Westbrook. Is that cheating, though? I mean, I literally just took the listeners. I'm going to put the listeners to work. Listeners, save me. Give me your answers. Here, text me at 555-5555 the answers to all the questions, and we'll put those answers on air, but I'll be the one answering them. I don't know if this is correct or not, but my answer's in, Andre. Do I need to put a countdown on you, sir? Wrong. I don't even get a sound effect for that. But okay, we get one off the board. I would have said Russell Westbrook at some point in time anyway, because that's definitely a guy that's turned the ball over. Now, that said, he's sort of faded the last, couple years. And if this was heyday Russell Westbrook. Maybe that would have been correct. Nope, couldn't hear the buzzer. So, production value is not great, Andre. I don't know if anybody else could hear the buzzer either. Maybe I'll just chime in and do a buzzer myself. Okay. All right. So a player that has over the last, say, 5 seasons or so, 19, 20, 20, 21, 21, 22, 22, 23. I think that's 4 seasons I just counted. 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. That's about 5 seasons. Who had the ball a lot is the first thing going through my mind. Second of all, who turned the ball over a lot? I'll go with LeBron James just because of the longevity, just because of the games played. He's been holding that ball forever. LeBron James. That is incorrect. Incorrect. Okay. Ice pick in your eye trivia. Which NBA player has the most turnovers between October 2nd, 2019 and October 2nd, 2024? A lot of turnovers flinging around there. I will go with the one and the only Nikola Jokic. Oh, it's funny. The tip comes on the screen, and it's a point guard. Is it a point center? Because my answer is most definitely wrong. Wrong. Says the great Andre Lemos. Lemos. Okay. Tip is in, and it's a point guard that's had those turnovers. And I'd love to say that it's Ben Simmons, but Ben Simmons doesn't play basketball. 4 more tries to go as I embarrass myself on live YouTube vision, whatever the heck this is. It's a player that's got to have played quite a bit. And I think the answer is this. I think I got this. Luka Doncic. Give it to me. Luka Doncic. Wrong. Am I allowed to look at a list of players? That's a question I have right now. Am I about to look at a list of players? No, I got to go off memory. Well, I guess this will definitely wake me up. Okay. Who has been flinging it around the yard, running around, turning the ball over, left and right, just doing a great job of giving it away? I don't know. I really don't know. I think the answer is the player that we were just talking about. Oh, the tip is in. The tip is in. It was a little bit of a fantasy darling. He was a fantasy darling for a bit. Who was a fantasy darling that leads the league in turnovers? To get another listener question. Actually, I have thought about Harden here. Is Steve Sloan's weighing in again? I don't know. How'd Steve Sloan get on the air so much? Shout out Steve Sloan. Great job, man. Do you want to host the show, Steve? Because I could just bring you in and I'll just sit over here behind this fancy backdrop. I'm not going to answer that. I'm not going to go there. I'm going to go with Trae Young. Give me Trae Young. Oh, the silence is killing me. Oh my gosh, we got it. Winner. Dr. A, I know you're listening. Shout out. Feel better, brother. I needed that. I really did need that. I've been trailing the great Dr. A. Was a loser between Dr. A. Has to fly across the country and buy the other a beer. Rick somehow got into this thing midstream. I don't even know if this is fair or not, but Rick is a monster. He's a monster. All right, so Andre says he's got a question here. But Rick's like a monster. His knowledge of trivia is really, really good. I don't know how we're going to factor this in. I think we should all meet in Vegas and just blow it out old man style. All right. Raymond Lim says, I'm definitely getting AD over Luka at pick 4 with a question mark. I'm at pick 4, and Shea will be gone at 3. Is Luca still good even with the 2 games in the last week of the playoffs? Yeah, these playoff questions, they're tough, guys. They're real tough. It sounded like AD was the other option here. A lot of AD love this season, folks, and I get it. Like at some point in the time, these guys they throw caution in the wind and they go, "I want to play. I don't want to sit and I don't want to go to the locker room every game and do whatever the hell Anthony Davis does in the locker room every game." The guy must have the worst bladder in the history of NBA players. But we're basically saying all of a sudden that AD is not a guy who usually plays less than 60 games every season. Um, and we're saying he's going to do it twice in a row. And that's possible. It really is possible. I mean, again, maybe he has turned the page. He wants to play. I wonder if things go south in LA, how much that will be a true statement. When I say south in LA, I'm talking LeBron James. I'm talking whatever he wants his end of career tour to be. I really doubt this is his last season. Does he just go for it regardless because he knows he's only got a little bit more basketball in him? Or does he kind of save it up for a year where they actually have a chance to win? What's going on with his son? Is that annoying for people? I mean, who knows? There's a lot wrong in LA right now. And so Anthony Davis creeping up the ranks. I mean, maybe not even creeping, moving like a giant up through the ranks. And I've seen him as high as like 4. Let's say, I don't know where I saw that, but it's really a tough pick this season at 5, 6, 7, 8. These are tough places to draft. I get why people are looking at Anthony Davis. I think with Luka at 2 games, in the last week of the playoffs, I don't have our schedule grid, which you can get in the draft guide, and you can check that out. Maybe Andre can drop a link somewhere. But that 2 games, look, I don't know that I would draft AD over Luka just because of the playoff schedule. I don't know what AD's games are right now off the top of my head. If it was 4 versus 2, maybe you could build a case for that. But again, we're talking end of season, injury risk. If Los Angeles is in the playoff chase, if they're, happy with their seeding, if they're not happy with their seeding, if there's no chance to improve or get worse in their seeding, if they're not in the playoff chase, I mean, that's major shutdown territory. So basically what I would say is I'd take Luka even with the 2 games. So let me know. Hit us up in Discord if you have other questions as well. If I don't get a complete answer, sometimes I can get you a more researched answer. Other pros in there as well. You can bang that out in the Discord chat, which is a really cool place, by the way. We're going to be building that out even more. So thank you very much, Raymond, for the question. All right, let's get to this third tier here. We got James Harden, Jalen Brunson, and Damian Lillard. These are big names. I mean, James Harden's sort of flying up ADP boards right now. The Kawhi Leonard news isn't helping Kawhi. It's helping James Harden. The Clippers, they don't have their pick, so they kind of have every reason to just sort of play it out. How much does James Harden want to play it out? He's been pretty maligned. He's in incredible shape, according to people around the league. He seems ready to sort of embrace the challenge of trying to be old James Harden. Can he be old James Harden? I really think the question of how in shape he is really matters here, because whether it was falling out of shape or it was just natural decline, he has not been able to finish. And it's shown up in his decision making on the basketball floor. Whereas in prior seasons, he would have gone all the way to the cup, or he would have tried to draw that foul. He would have tried to go to his kind of pet move. Now he's not doing that because I don't think he believes he can finish at a high level. Things kind of leveled out last season. In fact, last season, Harden was falling into the 3rd, 4th, and even 5th rounds, and we were all over that. The B150 was all over that, and we cleaned up, and it was great. One of those sort of going against the grain. Nobody wanted James Harden last year. It was good for us. Now, this season, he's pretty expensive. Probably a fine pick, if you ask me. The rest of this tier is interesting and a little bit iffy. Jalen Brunson going at 21.4. I mean, everybody watched Jalen Brunson. Everybody loves Jalen Brunson. there was concern about 3 days ago that Jalen Brunson would take a step back. And a lot of people love Jalen Brunson so much that they were just like, I don't care how many players are in New York. They're all going to play around him, not vice versa. So they were ready to go all in on Brunson, kind of no matter what. I looked at this trade for New York, and we would like, kind of stop the presses, and I spent a solid, 4 to 6 hours just kind of breaking it down from every single angle, trying to figure out what actions they were going to be running in New York, who's going to be the screener, who's going to be the roller, where's Mikal Bridges going to stand in the offense? How's he going to get his shots? What kind of shot diet are these guys going to get? What's Cat going to do? Even like the sort of intangible stuff, like, Tibbs has coached Cat. Tibbs has watched Jimmy Butler eviscerate Cat. I think Tibbs has got to know what Cat is. Is Cat going to get tough in New York? What's that going to look like on the floor? Is he going to be able to command shots from Jalen Brunson, or like kind of have the offense kind of tilt toward him? And kind of what I came up with Jalen is that this is good in the sense that it takes more shots and more usage and puts it in his corner. But is it that perfect scenario it was last season where everything was perfectly set up for him and he was able to just go through the roof and just clobber a top 20 season? I don't know if it's that way. I really don't. I think that they do have some real question marks about how they're going to run that offense. And it's going to take a little bit, I think, with these new pieces for them to be good. So I think there's reasons for Jalen Brunson to sort of slide early on. And I think that he might not meet his ADP. So, you can find a lot of that stuff in the B150. I don't want to give too much of that out. The paying subscribers deserve that information. But Jalen Brunson, I love the guy. And I'm so freaking heartbroken. I've been a lifelong Knicks fan for about 5 months. And they took my Dante and they took my Isaiah Hartenstein and they got rid of them. And they'll never be the same. They'll never be the same. I'm sorry, Cat is soft. And New York will not win it with him. And I think they could have won just by getting kind of a plug and play center out there. But I digress. Then Lillard's super interesting because this is a guy who in the past has had sort of top 7 value. He was a safe top 7 value. I mean, he was like top 6. He wasn't going to get into that, but 7, just lock him in. Milwaukee both needs him to be super productive, and Giannis Antetokounmpo has a weird knee thing that didn't really kill him last year, but I've just been waiting for that to happen. And by the way, Giannis as the GM, or however you want to call that, put together this iteration of the Bucks, and it's been bumpy at best. I mean, Doc Rivers is the freaking coach. And so one of two things is going to happen. They're either going to play really hard early on and try to prove why they belong in that championship contention discussion, and it's going to go well. And then Damian Lillard just kind of got to cruise as a 1A, 1B kind of a guy. I don't know that it's going to be top 7 Damian Lillard in that situation, but it's going to be pretty good. That seems nice. And what happens if something happens to Giannis and then you do get full Damian Lillard, possibly a late first round value Damian Lillard? So there's some upside here. The other scenario is that it doesn't work and everybody starts looking at the exit for what they're doing next. It's not like these players have tremendous history with one another. It's where's Giannis going to play next? What's Lillard's next move at the tail end of his career? If that starts going south, if Doc Rivers starts, exiting stage, if it's messy, it could get messy for Lillard. So I'll say this about this tier. I like Harden, but I think you can start to look downward because these next tiers, 4, 5, 6, 7, even 8, down into the low or near the 100 range, there's some compelling stuff going on. So let's check that out. ADP tier 4, we got De'Aaron Fox, LaMelo Ball, and Tyrese Maxey. What a crew. What a crew. I mean, look, if you want some adrenaline, Draft LaMelo Ball. Like, if you can't wake up, draft LaMelo Ball. I This is a lottery ticket. It's a lottery ticket that he might be a top 8 play. That's it. There's nothing to analyze here. Do you feel lucky? Is the question for LaMelo Ball. If you feel lucky and he plays 76 games, you will have a top 8 value. If he plays 72 games, if he plays 68 games, you will meet this ADP. If he plays 12 games, you will be crying in your beer. That's fun. Draft LaMelo Ball. Have at it, folks. Other than that, you have De'Aaron Fox in a very crowded situation all of a sudden, and that's probably evidenced in that 25.3 ADP. I famously said something about De'Aaron Fox that he wasn't that good, or he wasn't as good as D'Anthony Melton. It was a little bit tongue in cheek, but it was also pretty serious at the time because he was pretty bad at the time. And boy, do I look dumb! My goodness. Now, fast forward to now, he plays defense kind of relentlessly. He cares a lot. He has better handles than all probably but like 5 players in the league, and I don't know who they are, but I mean, just watching him dribble a basketball in a game with 3 players surrounding him, with the pressure of being a number 1 scorer, with the pressure of carrying a franchise, it's a treat. And by the way, his 3-point shot got deadly 2 seasons ago, working with shooting coach Luke Laux. And it is really just about free throws for him. If he could ever figure that out, sky's the limit for him. But we're talking an electric basketball player. The other guy in this tier, Tyrese Maxey, he is also electric. He is also a top 5 shooter in this league. When I say that, I mean, like, if you wanted to pick 5 guys that would, with the game on the line, with players flying at them off the dribble, kind of a deal, who do you take? Well, Maxey's in that top 5 for me. Also, Maxey plays with old dudes that don't want to get hurt. It's an incredible. I mean, you ever see old guys on the basketball court at 24-hour fitness or wherever, and they're like, yeah, young guy, you run. I'll stand here. You go do everything. That's going to be the case in Philly this season. I think Tyrese Maxey is just going to have an outstanding season. Just stay healthy, Tyrese, and you will be great. I think this tier represents a great soft landing spot for people. If you miss out on somebody early that you like and you want to have a top end point guard, I think this tier does great for you. Okay, ADP tier 5. DeJounte Murray, John Morant, Cade Cunningham, and Fred VanVleet. Yes, please. DeJounte Murray, 32, John Morant, 34, Cade, 35, Fred VanVleet, 39. Now, Cade is going to be sort of a, either like him or you don't. I haven't really been on the Cade bandwagon for a couple reasons in the last couple of years, but everybody else was. And I think people are trying to get their money back. I think they're trying to get their money back with a lot of different plays, sort of in that vein this season. Jordan Poole is a guy that comes to mind. A lot of people went big on Jordan Poole, hoping for that post-hype season. And Cade, I think that's the same thing. I don't like what's going on in Detroit. I don't like what the end of the season might look like for Detroit. I don't like what the crowd even in Detroit. We're talking not even a great crowd. We're just talking about veterans that have been acquired, and there's just sort of a lot of stuff going on. And Cade, yeah, sure, he will be the number 1 guy, but how much does he have to defer? How much does he have to kind of work through all of that? I don't know that he is commensurate with the other 3 names on this list, which, by the way, John Morant, say whatever you want to say. I bet, because that guy loves jumping and dunking on people, that it's been terrible for him being off the basketball floor. I bet that John Morant is like foaming at the mouth, ready to play. And it sounds like Memphis is trying to do a little bit something different on offense this season. And he is going to be a big piece of that. It sounds like they want to get up and down the floor more. and have a little bit more of a motion-based offense. And maybe this is just a sign of them leveling up. Maybe this is a sign of them trying to maybe rein in John Morant a little bit and bring him into more of a system instead of so much one-on-one isolation play. Maybe they all got together and decided that not only can they do sort of the more simplistic, I can just beat my guy and get by him sort of stuff, to I can do that and do something smart on the other side of the pattern, and we can get up and down the floor. I think a lot of teams watched Indiana last season and realized that pace is really good. Pace can be fun. And if you throw a team out there and you just really go for it on pace, everybody gets great shots. It can also be a total mess. But I think if you feel like you've leveled up offensively, mentally, with decision making and such, and everybody thinks that you could just go run and do pace. You have to be good at it. You have to actually be good at it in order to be able to do it. You don't just get those great shots for free. But John Morant, I mean, in a pace-based game and you're flying up and down the floor, he's an exciting pick at this range. In a 9-cat league with all those turnovers, you probably want to pause a little bit and just kind of figure out what your team build is and figure out if you can handle that level of turnovers at that price. But John Morant, super solid in that tier. And DeJounte Murray, it's a crowd now, but people on the ground in New Orleans are chattering that DeJounte might be the man. So, put that in your pipe and smoke it. And then Fred VanVleet, this dude's like 5'8" and he had 5 blocks in a game last season. He's somehow put the knee concerns behind him. And this is a guy coming off of a big season, and he did it with more or less the same crowd that will be there. I think the only question for Fred VanVleet is if you're concerned about the knee. If you're concerned about the knee, I get it. I mean, that didn't look great. It didn't look like a great idea that Houston should sign him. But guess who was right and guess who was wrong? They were right, and I was wrong. So, Fred VanVleet, John Morant, DeJounte Murray, these are quality point guard options at a quality price. So I like tier 5. All right, we're going to go to ADP tier 6. We have Jamal Murray. We have Emmanuel Quickley. We have Darius Garland. This is a shaky tier. Jamal Murray at 50, pricey. Jamal Murray at the Olympics, heavy. Jamal Murray career-wise, very dicey. Games played, dicey. Skill-wise, if he can get the pounds off, if he can kind of reprove himself. What's interesting in Denver, they've been iffy on him. This is a guy that should be locked in as the 1-2 punch duo of the future of the next 4 to 5 years, and paid as such he is, but it wasn't a gimme. It wasn't a layup. People had some consternation about it locally. Anyway, that's a long way to say that he's pricey. Emmanuel Quickley, big name. I mean, first of all, we had Quickley last season. It was great. In a low minute role, we knew he could be good, and he was. And then he got traded and he got the big role, and that was great. So that was awesome. Now this season, I think people are remembering how well it looked, how good it looked, pardon me, when Scotty Barnes was out. I love Emmanuel Quickley. I think he's got a nice, neat fantasy game. I think that there's a lot to like on the foul line. I think there's a lot to like in his ability to get easy shots at a high rate. I think he and RJ Barrett and Scotty Barnes, like, they're not perfect, but they kind of do different things on the floor. And if they can just add enough shooting around those guys, I think they might be onto something, at least in the short term. That was interesting that Jakob Poeltl was openly saying the thing you're not supposed to say the other day about them not wanting to necessarily win as many games. That might be a concern for Quickley. But for the most part, I do think you get kind of back into the first round numbers for at least 2/3 of the season, and probably a guy that's not going to get hurt. So this is an iffy tier, but he's sort of the safe option. It's just going to be a little bit pricey. So this might be this might be the line where you say, okay, I'm going to go above this line. I'm going to make sure I get either at least 1 point guard from this range, and then probably 2, or look at these other tiers lower down as we go, and approach this from a more scarce position where you're going to kind of load up your team elsewhere and then bring these guys from the maybe tier 7 and tier 8 into the fold. Garland, the way I would explain Garland is He is at his low point, and that is that. And there's nothing else to say there. So, what do we see out of Darius Garland? Has the storm passed? The getting mixed up with Donovan Mitchell, his agent trying to get him out of town, and now he's still there. Has the storm passed? Is he going to just get better now because the storm has passed? It was bad for him in the playoffs, and he had a little bit of a moment at the end of their run where he hit a couple key shots, and then the team coalesced around him. Maybe that was just a little kind of low key moment in time that bodes well for the future, but iffy this tier. Let's see. Got a little news breaking here. Luka sustained a hit during workouts this week, resulting in a left calf contusion. Nah, I don't care. Luka takes hits all season long, and he plays through everything and ends up in the playoffs needing shots into his sternum. Tier 7, D'Angelo Russell, Drew Holiday, Kobe White. I mean, D'Angelo's going to play, and the funny thing is the Lakers need him to play this way. He's going to play free. He's going to try to get his. He's going to try to get out of town. I think he's tired of being in LA. Maybe, who knows? Not appreciated, not getting playoff minutes. Wondering about his next deal. I think both he and the team want him to have a fast start. So there's your rationale for drafting him. These are in a 78 range. So we're talking just outside of the 6th round into the 7th round there. It's going to feel icky to draft D'Angelo Russell, but he had a massive season last year. So there is some pretext for some possible upside beyond this kind of draft weight here. As part of his ADP. It's not going to feel good, but I think there's a rationale for drafting him. Drew Holiday. One theory I've been working with on the Celtics is, what if the league catches up to them? What if they have to play out the stretch? What if they aren't as good, because everybody caught up? What if they suffer an injury? This idea that they're going to boat race everybody and be 12 points better every game than their opponent. And, it's possible, but that's the conditions that we're all drafting kind of with in our minds. We're going, okay, this is all good and great. We love every single guy. But by the way, there's too many great guys on one team. And also everybody's price got better. Derek White went big. We thought he would go big last season. He went big. Derek White now being drafted sort of closer to where his value is. So we're kind of fading these guys a little tiny bit because what if? Well, Drew Holiday came into the playoffs last season in the best shape that I've seen him in probably 5 to 7 years. It was really a treat to watch him on the basketball floor with the speed and the lateral movement and the strength and just all of that. And like Derek White, maybe the best player on the floor for them. And this is a guy who usually performs in the back end of the top 40. And if that, whatever the thing is, happens, you're getting a great value here. And then Kobe White at 78.8. I suspect this number is going to keep going up. I think he's the best guard on the team, and there's definitely challenges. I mean, Giddey, Levine, hell, Lonzo Ball's even playing some basketball. Apparently, that not a lot of worry there, but that's going to be a little bit messy. And at the same time, I just think that he's a locked in, loaded mid-round value this season. So this tier 7, I think, is a little bit of a safety, a little comfort blanket for folks. If these guys are on the board, you at least have a chance at a good option for that 2nd or 3rd point guard position, depending on how you're building your team out. ADP tier 8, Jalen Suggs, Chris Paul, and Terry Rozier. So this is where it gets a little shaky. And in this area, it's a good shaky. Jalen Suggs, he has 2 things working against him. He has his injury history, and then he also has the crowd in Orlando. That's it. Everything else with him is great. I love the way he plays the game. I love the way certain elements of his stat set are where they're at. I think he has an expandable fantasy game. I think it's going to be good for him in the future, provided he can get kind of past this injury bug that's dogged his early career. But, if I end up with Suggs on my team, I'm not unhappy. Chris Paul, if I get Chris Paul on my team, I'm not unhappy. I mean, first of all, watching him at Media Day next to Wemby was like energizing. I maybe it's like I got to watch every Spurs game this year just to see this. Wemby was like 5 times his size and looked twice as athletic. That's Chris Paul. And that's important because Chris Paul's going to be throwing lobs to this guy all season long. And the Devin Vassell stuff, it kind of cuts both ways. It means they're going to have to rely on Chris Paul a lot more early on. It also might mean that they are less competitive, and that's the thing we don't want for this squad. But Chris Paul, his numbers have fallen off significantly, and that's completely understandable given the situation in Golden State and just being old and all that mileage. Completely understandable. If this dude gets anything close to what he used to be, and if he decides that he really likes playing basketball in San Antonio for Pop with Wemby, and they keep winning games and there's playoff basketball in the air, and they decide we're going to go for it. We want to get a play-in experience for Wemby. We want to try to get in the playoffs for Wemby. We want to just see what we have there. We don't want to tank for Cooper Flag. If that starts coming into play, I mean, he's got top 25 potential. These risks are real. They're real risks. He's an old dude that could get injured, and he's broken his hand 5 million times. Like, this is not a layup. This ADP is not so bad, but if you end up getting a Chris Paul in this range, with your pick 100, you're in round 9 of your draft. And these are draft slots where you can get waiver wire pickups to fill the gaps if they don't work out. This is a big swing here. I'm not unhappy if I'm forced into this position here because of whatever reason. I'm drafting with great players or something. I'm not unhappy with this. Terry Rozier. I'm not unhappy with Terry Rozier at 100. Terry Rozier has made a career out of finishing top 40 when everybody thought he would be top 80. Terry Rozier has made a career of starting a season slow, and everybody jumps off the wagon, and then he goes, oh, by the way, I still shoot 45% or whatever, and then boom, he's off to the races. Terry Rozier in Miami will not have the flexibility and freedom that he had in Charlotte. That's a fact. Terry Rozier in Miami has to kind of deal with the Jimmy Butler thing. And what's happening with Jimmy Butler? Is Jimmy Butler going to go for it this season in a contract year, with all that stuff floating around? He and Pat Riley kind of trading barbs, so to speak. I mean, if it all goes to hell with Jimmy and Terry Rozier is kind of crowned sort of not the man, but the man, he could have another top 40 season. It's not likely right now, but each of these three guys to me represents a good play around 100 that you can be happy with on draft day. So I like this tier. Okay, ADP tier 9, and then 10. Oh boy. ADP tier 9. This is the iffy tier. I mean, when I say iffy, I mean like iffy. Like, this isn't great iffy. Tyus Jones at 110, Keontae George at 117, and then Mike Conley at 123. I think this is the last tier that I would wait on if I don't have point guard positions filled that I need to fill. And at the minimum, at least it'll be safe. And in the case of Keontae George, it'll be exciting. With Keontae tanking and whether they want to let him go from start to finish in the season, that's a question. I kind of think they do want him to go the whole way. And I kind of think it doesn't matter given his fantasy deficiencies. Now, does he have the sort of DNA, so to speak, to be able to have all of the numbers go up at one time, to have growth in all of the numbers? Probably. He does. But that's what it's going to take for him to beat his ADP. People are very excited about Keontae George. Physically, he makes sense. It's the lack of the efficiency. It's the lack of defensive numbers. And it's basically going to be a loss for a lot of folks who get excited about Keontae George. But if you're forced into drafting him, at least you'll have an exciting player on your hands, and then you can kind of flesh out the details from there. And Tyus Jones, he just has to exist, and he'll have a top 100 value. He's probably my favorite play in this tier. And Mike Conley, the Julius Randle thing is probably not great for him. And whereas prior to the Julius Randle trade, I would say, hey, Mike Conley, it's not going to be as good as it's been in previous years where you just sort of trip and fall and Mike Conley does well for you. This year, it's going to have its challenges. If things start to go south for whatever reason, is Mike Conley going to play through whatever injury, XYZ? I don't know. And where is he at career-wise, and what is he thinking? His big picture, those questions got a lot more cloudy because I don't think that move for Minnesota was great. And I think their ownership issues are now starting to bleed over into the on-court product. And Conley, the consummate professional, will do his best to navigate that, but it just kind of enough at the edges to make Mike Conley not somebody I'd be happy about relying on in a fantasy draft. And then tier 10, just so we can round this show out and call it a show. Malcolm Brogdon, no. Dennis Schroeder, yes. Scoot, Alute, Henderson, yes. I mean, his current ADP is 130. I get all the deficiencies. I get all the concerns. If they're going to play tanking sort of ball at the end of the season, I do think Scoot will be a part of those plans. I do think he will improve mightily. I think his April was a harbinger of things to come. Thank you, Dr. A, for that dig the other day on the show. So I'm happy with Scoot. I'm probably okay with him at this ADP, keeping in mind all of those deficiencies. Lonzo Ball, 135.5, want nothing to do with him. Russell Westbrook at 140. Yeah, I think he could be okay. Trey Jones at 139.6. No thanks. That's going to do it for this show. Thank you guys for your questions. Thank you guys for all of your support. Shout out to the Blurb Feed crew for doing a great job keeping all the NBA news organized. That's free and on the front page of the website. So go check that out at sportsethos.com. B150 is out. Draft Tracker is out, I believe. That's a question mark, but that's coming soon, if not out right now. And all the features, you got Dr. A's My Guys, player profiles, draft strategy, in-depth stuff, you name it, it's all there. So go check it out, guys. This has been Fantasy NBA Today, presented by Bet Online, a Sports Ethos presentation. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, be well.